Hi, I'm Martha Beck.
And I'm Rowan Megan, and this is Bewildered, the podcast for people trying to figure it out, just like we are, aren't we, Marty?
Every day, all day. It can get tiring.
I think we try too hard sometimes.
We should figure that out.
Let's try less.
All right.
But then again, we have to do a podcast about it, so maybe we should do it more.
So maybe you should tell us and the listeners, what are you trying to figure out for sure, for reals?
For reals? All right. So in my real life, outside of the scope of this slightly artificial environment of the podcast, this is what I'm trying to figure out. I got tattoos, and once I got tattoos, I wanted more. I don't think I'm alone.
In people.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It's fun, right? And it's kind of like getting logos on you or something. So,
it's
but
art.
the next, yeah, man. But my art is like words, man, and I want to put words on me next because pictures, I don't know. I'm ready for the words to come on. But then it turns out you have to choose the right words, and I usually want song. I know, right? So I want to put song lyrics on me, and I've got like a short list of song lyrics that I want to get tattooed on my body. But like, here's my dilemma. Here's what I'm trying to figure out is what, like, there are song lyrics that are undeniably cool.
Oh yeah.
And by cool, I mean like thought-provoking and soul-enriching and like, yeah, that feels like true enough to kind of brand my life with, you know?
Yeah.
But they gotta pass the earworm test, because I'm thinking, like, what if you know, like every day you just have to like look at your watch, you know, and then you've got like, as soon as you look down at your watch to see what time it is, suddenly you've got staying alive.
Well, that's not so bad. It would remind you to stay alive.
Yeah, but I think but then it's just in my head all the time and round, and then I look at my watch, then it's back. I think it could be annoying, or like, now you're just somebody that I used to know, somebody.
Well, that would be terrible to see that on your wrist every time you look. Like your wrist wouldn't even know you.
Yeah, that's a bad example, except it is an earworm, so it's an example of that.
I think you should get the lyric from MacArthur Park where it says that love, we are pressed between love's fevered pages like a striped pair of pants.
Do you think I should put like the little accent on the E of striped head to make sure
to
that
make the meter work?
Everyone knows.
The other thing you could do is you could have yourself tattooed with a striped pair of pants. Like over your whole lower body.
No, Marty, I kind of love that. I really do. I kind of love it.
Yeah, you could just do trompe-l'oeil over your whole body. Like, you'd have to really pick out the outfit. But then you get it tattooed onto you. Boom, you're done. Just stay in a warm climate. Don't worry, the whole world's going that way.
How about Maria Bamford's thing of like, if you really love someone, you should get their face tattooed onto your face.
On top of your own face.
And then you should get their arm hair tattooed on your arms.
Okay, honey. Yeah, with us, that's really complex. We'd have to have two faces tattooed onto our face.
One in profile and one straight on, I'd say. But I'm thinking, look, this is getting a bit granular.
It's getting very Picasso-esque too.
It is. You know what? I'll keep working on mine. What are you trying to figure out?
Okay, so here's the thing. My physical therapist, whom I love for torturing me horribly once a week.
Mysterious.
Has given me this image in my mind of me, instead of just like a creaky post-surgery person lifting weights and screaming that it was too hard. She has an image that she's put into my head of me running fleet-footed through the forest.
Oh, like a deer.
Yeah, and I even got a special pair of fleet-footed shoes and everything.
Are they hoofs?
They're not unlike hoofs, I have to say. But I have a sort of trauma memory of doing a seminar in Sedona, Arizona many years ago, where with 12 middle-aged American women. Actually, I think there was someone from Trinidad and Tobago. But we went out to be fleet-footed in nature. It was kind of deserty, but kind of scrubby. And the whole idea was that you can hear people coming. If you're tuned into the landscape, you can hear that the landscape is disturbed where there are people. So when you sense the disturbance, you run and hide behind a cactus or whatever.
It's amazing what people will pay you money for.
I know, you have to get really, here's the thing.
Now we are women who run with the cacti.
Yes. Either do something really, really normal and right down the center of the lane, like Oprah, we're all going to Australia or whatever, or everybody gets a car, or do something completely bizarre, like we're gonna go into the desert, and when we sense others coming, we're gonna hide. So this was all supposed to work really well.
And
like
this
they'd
is
never
how to
know
make
we
your
were
life
there.
work better.
Yes, they'd never know we'd been there. They would just walk through, never knowing that we, woodsy people were hiding behind the cacti. The problem was that we weren't nearly sensitive enough to hear the disturbance in nature. So the first thing we knew is we'd see other hikers coming around a bend, and then it was like, oh my God, we had to disappear. So we'd see like a couple of European hikers with their walking sticks in each hand, 1, 2, 1, 2. And we'd look at them, and then everybody, these 12 women would just scatter into the cacti. And the tourists would be like, what's happening? What's happening? And they would run after us, and we would try to hide, and they'd be like, tell us what's happening, with their walking sticks.
What are we hiding from? What's coming to get us?
It was a debacle. And I don't want that to happen again. So I'm going to have to be, really fleet-footed, or really, I don't know, wear a balaclava. What is the hat that covers your face?
Balaclava.
Balaclava, yeah. But then if I'm running...
is the tasty Middle Eastern honey sweet.
So if I'm running through the forest with baklava on my head, I think I'll get a replay of Sedona. So
I really like the idea that what you did was like, when you heard someone coming and there's like a disturbance in nature, you all just froze like mimes.
Yeah, we did. We weren't supposed to. We were supposed to slither like weasels. Just no one would know. But instead there was like a full 5 seconds of us just going, oh! And then running everywhere. And one woman had this huge, brightly flowered hat on. You could not miss the sight of this thing bouncing through the desert. It was.
What were you trying to teach them?
We were trying to teach them to be invisible in nature, to be such a part of nature that the civilized. I've been doing this a while, Rowie, and taking different approaches. Right now, we're doing a podcast about going back to nature and leaving culture. At that time, we were trying to literally, physically do it by running into the cacti, wearing flowery hats. Some things work better than others. I'm trying to figure it out. So cruel to me.
What on earth did you do before I came along?
Oh, you don't want to know. You really don't want to know.
I think I just found out. We'll be right back with more Bewildered. We don't say this enough. We are so glad you're a Bewildered listener, and we're hoping you might want to go to the next level with us, by which I mean if you rate and review the podcast, it helps new people find us so we can keep bewildering new souls, and you know how much we love that. Ratings are very much appreciated. Obviously, the more stars you give us, the more appreciation is forthcoming. Reviews are quite simply heaven, and we read every one and exclaim over them, and we just love you all. Mwah.
Enlighten the people as to today's topic.
Okay. I'm just trying to cleanse my mind of the imagery.
If you see me dashing and hiding behind a plant in the house just now, you'll know why.
I think of that thing in movies where you're hiding behind a plant and then you like pick because it's like a pot plant, and you pick up the pot plant and you go doot, 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 and then you put it down again.
Very effective.
Yeah, so like that, but with cactus, it's confusing. It's confusing.
Ow!
Visual. Today, Marty, on this very serious podcast.
Oh, yeah.
We will be discussing what you call in your system, your cosmology of cactus, you call square 4. Now, the paying attention kind of listener will, that kind, they will remember that we've at various times done a show on each of the first 3 of 4 squares.
All right.
And if you go to the show notes, you will find the episodes and links. Yeah. To that. Thank you, Julia. And today it's time for us to come full square. And we're going to talk about square 4. So, Marty, talk to us about the squares. What are you on about with these squares?
Okay.
Why are they
so
square?
super fast? The only thing people ever need to hear about from a coach, a life coach, is how to deal with something that they haven't dealt with before or they never figured out how to deal with. And there are 4 stages in doing that.
Is there 4 stages when a European tourist is chasing you through the desert?
Oh, yeah. I could totally go through that. The initial panic, then the actual pursuit, then the capture, and then the bloody brawl. It's terrible. And they have walking sticks. But that's a specialized set of squares. Okay?
Okay, babe.
It's a bonus for our listeners. Yeah. Okay. So something happens in your life, you get a shock, an opportunity, or just growth. You fall in love, you fall out of love, you get a job, you lose a job, whatever. Something happens in your life and you go into a period of, first it's like, oh, death and rebirth. I've got to let go of my old identity and allow for a new one. You don't know what it is yet. We call that square 1. It's like a caterpillar going into a cocoon and dissolving, which is what they do in there. Then we've got square 2, which is where you start to get intimations of what your next identity will be. So that's like the caterpillar. Once it's dissolved, it has these little things in it called imago cells that get triggered when it's fully dissolved in it. They rebuild those same cells into a butterfly.
They have the image of the butterfly inside the cell. It's kind of amazing.
Precisely. And that's square 2. We call it dreaming and screaming. I do call it dreaming and screaming but it's dreaming and scheming because you get these ideas. Like Rose thinking about getting a tattoo. She's also talked about changing her hair from the gracious badger, but I don't want her to. That's a whole different argument. But when you start getting a new identity, you start seeing yourself in new ways. You start dressing differently. You might rearrange your furniture. A new you is coming to the surface, but you still don't know exactly what it is. You dream it, and then you get really detailed and you scheme it. It's like you dream up your blueprint for a wonderful house, then you make the plans really concrete on paper. Then you go into square 3, which I call the hero's saga. And that's about making the dream come true in the physical world. And that's like a butterfly sawing the top off his chrysalis and like, pulling himself out. And it's very hard. Making your dreams come true in that first stage of reality is super difficult. So that's square 3, the hero's saga, the road of trials. Square 4 is when you've got your new identity, you sort of know who you are, and it's working. It's like, you're a butterfly now. You hardly even remember being a caterpillar. And you can fly and float and sip at flowers and mate and reproduce and all that stuff. And all of this is the way we teach. My whole life coaching system, when people come into Wayfinder life coaching to be trained, is learning how to handle each one of these squares. Yeah.
And it's like often I think when people are learning about the change cycle and the 4 squares, square 4 sort of just seems like the end, you did it. Yeah. But it is actually a space that we inhabit in our lives within the changes we go through, right?
Yeah. And the interesting thing to me is that square 4, it's like being a potter who just has to kick the wheel every now and again. It's like, it's relaxed and casual, but it's not inert. Right? It's just that you've got processes at work and they are effective and it's working.
Yeah. So like at work in our day job, which is part of it is doing the life coach training and administering all of that. We talk about, different projects or different things we're working on as being in, this is still in square 3. And what we know about square 3 is that it's always like, it's harder than you think it's going to be and so on. And but then there are aspects where we'll go, this is actually in square 4 now. Like we've run this system enough times in the real world that we kind of, it feels more like kicking the wheel than having to make a whole sculpture from scratch.
And actually, we've corrected it so many times.
Yeah.
We've corrected so many errors that now it's actually something we can relax into instead of continuing to tweak and build it, even though we're still continuing to tweak some parts of it. And but it's maintenance. It's maintenance. And we can get into that in any area of life, right?
Yeah. I feel like this is sometimes the hardest thing to explain to people is that we go through huge changes and tiny changes, and they all sort of follow the same cycle, but they're just on a different scale in our life. So it could be like, sorry?
Fractals. Google fractals. You'll see the exact thing.
I swear to God, I thought you just said pterodactyls. I was like, I am not following your logic, but okay, let's go there. So like you can be in the change cycle in terms of like relationships, or like how you set out the pattern of a typical day, or work, career, but also like, I'm really in square three in terms of how I like to have my coffee now. You know, like I have to try, do I like stevia? Do I want to try it with honey? So yeah, so it can be at any level, but it's fractals in the same way you said, or pterodactyls. It works the same whether it's tiny or big, right?
And you kind of get it systematized. Like we just sent Lila off to her preschool, and you about lost your mind getting the system right, because you always... You really do the first two squares. You want something to happen, and you imagine it fully, and then you have to go through the hard work of sewing labels into her clothing and getting her lunch. And now you've got a system. You know what happens every morning.
Right, because to me, the thought of having to think of everything anew each day is so much more horrifying than having a really stressful week while everything is set up.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's great. Everything we need to get to square four in everything. And when it's running, it's wonderful. It's like how your car works. It used to be that cars broke down all the time, like all the time. Everybody had a little repair kit. You remember that. I thought I would remember it and you wouldn't.
No, I do. My mum even just recently said to me about her car, which is the first new car she's ever owned. She's had it for about 15 years, and she gets very offended when people at the dealership tell her that it's older. And she goes, this car, it's never broken down.
Wow.
Not once. And I'm like, yeah, no, but that's our expectation now, Mum.
Yes. And it's interesting because we're at a point in our civilization where we have these fantastically complex systems that we really expect to work well. Like when we go online, we want that pig. I want to see that, my video of the combat wombat. Actually, I just saw a wombat in a book and I thought that's a combat wombat. But if you you Google combat wombat, you expect something to come back. And if it doesn't, you're like, this is buggered. We expect... Say that if you're not an American.
No,
my point
really
is,
don't, sweetie. You don't say
we're at
this
a place we're at a place in technology where we expect all these systems to run smoothly, and that's great. But we're at a time in history when that expectation can put us in really big trouble, and we will talk more about that in a minute. Yes.
Yeah. So. Square four in our culture, I think, it's fair to say that the culture sort of says, get where you're going and stay there, right? Right. Go there, stay there, you're good.
Establish an identity, decide to be a caterpillar, stay there.
Yes.
Get so comfortable that you can be complacent. And it used to be more like that. It's like people really did. They'd get married. And they'd say, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, because life expectancy was like 30 years, right? So I'm going to get married and I'm going to hold on to, I am now a married person and that will never go away. I'm going to work it out and lock it in and never have to change it, right?
Yeah. Like get married and hold.
Yes.
Or find a career and hold. You train as a plumber and that's it.
Yeah.
But I think, so what's interesting about where we are now, I mean, we're going to talk about how much change we're experiencing, but at the same time, I feel like we're in this impossible situation where we grow with a preference to being at the destination, you know, and I have a familiar rant on this podcast quite regularly about the kind of culture of convenience here in America. And some people might remember my quite famous cup holder diatribe. Back in the day,
we determined that you
still
had
get emails about my cup holder diatribe.
19 cup holders to prop up your existence throughout the day.
There were 17. So yeah, so we can get too comfortable, and that's not nature. And because it's me, I have Anita Franco lyrics for every occasion of our lives, and here is today's about the culture of complacency. She has a song, very good song, called Splinter. Look it up. And these are the lyrics. Some of the lyrics, not the entire song. You have to go look it up for that. But she says something about this landscape just doesn't feel right. Hyper air conditioned and lit up all night. Like we just got to see how comfortable can get. Like we can't even bring ourselves to sweat. I just love it.
That should be your tattue.
I can't
even bring myself to sweat. And
I'm
going to
get it done in my armpit.
Genius and art.
Oh my God.
Art and science meet inspiration. Booyah!
I can't even bring myself to sweat in each armpit. Oh my God, that's so good. Anyway, I think that people more mature than you will understand the very deep point that was being made there about complacency and the way that by wanting to always be comfortable, we're separating ourselves out from things like the temperature.
Right.
The time of day.
And it's understandable. It's an interesting dilemma because it's very understandable that we want to be comfortable. We want to save energy. We want things to be efficient. But here's the thing. I said a minute ago that things are changing so fast that it's hard to be complacent about anything and be comfortable that it won't, like the weather, and be comfortable that it won't be different in another 10, 5, 1 year. Yeah. So that's kind of getting dicey. And I also think that what Ani is pointing out is that our inner selves aren't really satisfied by that level of complacency either.
Yes, that's right.
So I was raised with the protest songs. Was it in the 60s? The Tiki-Taki song? Little boxes on the hillside, and they're all made out of tiki-taki?
I don't think so. I think that was
talking about the American suburbs in the period after World War II, in the 50s and 60s. And I don't know who sang it, and I don't know all the lyrics, but I do remember that it's about people being all made out of tiki-taki, and they all look just the same, and the houses look just the same, and there's a doctor and a lawyer and a business executive, and they're all made out of tiki-taki, and they all look just the same. So
anyone who saw the Naughties era show Weeds would recognize it as the theme song for that show.
So that was a naughty era, was it?
It was the naughty era.
Well, it points out that when everything gets that routinized and that systematized and everything's working right and everyone has the same yard and the same dog and the same car and the same job, it's freaking boring. It's horrible. It's soul crushing.
Yeah, because it is a separation from some essential feeling of being alive, right? It's like convenience taken to a certain extreme is going to choke experience.
Yeah, I'm starting to see what my physical therapist is talking to me about, because she wants me to go out and run through the woods precisely so I won't be on a track that's predictable. She really, and this is kind of what she's really good. So I think the discipline has gotten to this. Our bodies are made to confront unexpected situations and positions and velocities all the time. And when I used to go to the gym and do the same machines, I had strength in certain muscles, but she never has me do the same thing twice. And part of it is getting strong in my muscles, and part of it is getting strong in my nervous system, including my brain, because there's a lot of evidence that shows that confronting challenges and predicaments and unfamiliar situations actually keeps the brain healthier and keeps mental health in place. So ironically, if you lock in and hold everything, your your mind goes awry. And when things go awry, your mind rises to the challenge and becomes healthier.
So how does that idea interact with your idea of square four?
Well, okay. When I first started the whole life coaching system, I really thought get to square four and hold
Right.
was the way to do it. That was 20 some years ago. And even though I had studied social change and I knew it was accelerating, I really thought, ugh, who wants to be struggling with those first 3 squares all the time? So I myself was like, I grew up in a very sort of chaotic house where I felt like we were really abnormal. We did not have the ticky-tacky. We had more of a mold situation. Mold and chaos.
Driftwood.
Driftwood, yeah. Like things in the corner that could speak to us, but we didn't. They didn't have human features. It was not your typical suburban house. So I grew up really trying to get normal, and I personally anchored into the cultural norms when I was in my early 20s. I was already becoming a professor. I already had a husband and kids. That's what you need. I had a job it was a great job for a lifetime, get tenure, get locked in. I had a real marriage to an actual man, and there it was, gosh, the level of privilege that they just throw to you when you have a normal heterosexual cis everything marriage. Amazing. I had fabulous little children, and my life was finished. And then life started to say, think again. Oh, think again, you gay. Oh, think again, you hate academia. Oh, I just kept thinking again and thinking again. And yeah, I
don't think you were thinking. I don't think it was a thought process. I think it was something else.
It was more like running into a window, into a plate glass door over and over. So what about you? What was your experience with this in the culture?
Yeah, I think I have tried at various times to force myself into square four, sort of from the same impulse, I guess, that you had of just, this is normal. For me, it was probably a little bit more like, this is the mature thing to do at a certain time. You just settle yourself down and you get a real career. And, like when I lived in Bangkok for a year, and then I decided after this, no more traveling, no more going and living in other places. I know what I'll do. I'll get a dog. And that will force me to stay still, forgetting how much my mum loves dogs and how she would do anything for me.
Lock him in. That dog will lock you in.
Yeah, and just doing the dating apps, even if it made me miserable and stuff, getting a full-time job, because it was like, it's time to be a grown-up.
Yes. Oh.
And, I also think that there was, I knew I was strangling my own joy. But there was also, I think, this sense of weariness of I can't just keep endlessly not knowing what my job's going to be. I can't just endlessly, I'm sick of looking for someone to be in a relationship with. I'm so this person, whoever comes along, if I can live with it would be better than the endless hunting and searching and trying and striving. And I think that that's the what the culture sells us on Square Four is it's just like, now I can relax. Now I can stop trying so hard. But I don't think I no longer think that is that there is such a destination or that there should be.
Right. And it's not fun to strive all the time. But here's the way I would parse that out. You were striving hard, and striving hard is a good thing, but you were striving hard for things that were strangling your joy, and that's not such a good thing. So when you let go of the cultural model of where you're supposed to be in Square Four, strive all you want for something that comes from your soul's heart. But mix that up. But
Because that doesn't really feel like striving then, does it? It just feels like living.
Like you and I both write, and that can feel like striving for sure. But it's striving for something that our hearts want us to do, right? Usually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you went through IVF, which I just got to say, for anybody out there who's gone through infertility treatments, they don't tell you nobody tells you how hard it is. Physically, psychologically, it is really a massive striving undertaking. And you did that, and then you were like pregnant, and you're like, I'm going to do this perfectly, and you read all the books, and you knew how to have a perfect pregnancy, you had a birth plan, you know exactly how the birth would happen, and then pandemic, woo, fun! And I remember you coming in all pregnant, the second day of lockdown, and saying, I don't know whether they'll let me see this baby when she's born. I don't know if I get this thing, if I can, you know, because pregnant women were more susceptible. At least we thought so at that time, and I think it's still true.
Babies were being separated at the point of birth from their mothers to ostensibly protect them. But also women were giving birth by themselves. They weren't allowed to have a support person there during the birth for a period of time during the pandemic. So there was just so much uncertainty about what the conditions would be, and it's scary to think of being by yourself with a bunch of doctors having a baby. So
whenever the stakes are high, it's so normal for us to want to hold and grasp a thing that is fixed, that is reliable, that we know exactly how it's going to happen. But the way your pregnancy worked really showed me, it doesn't matter how high the stakes are. We are living in a time where the pace and degree of change are like nothing humanity has ever seen before. And that makes us able to plan things out way ahead of time. And it makes it more likely that things are going to scuttle our plans, because like this didn't scuttle our plans, but tornadoes now touch down on our street in Pennsylvania.
Well, it scuttled some of our plans not to spend the evening in our basement. Yeah.
I think it scuttled a lot of Adam's plans.
Oh, poor Adam.
Our son Adam, he looks out, he's like, is that a tornado? He has Down syndrome, if you haven't been listening. And we have to tell him. And he does the little round and round motion. And we're like, no, those only happen in the Midwest. And it's like, here it comes again. So, yeah, we're living in this time. And I knew, as I said, back in my 20s, even when I was trying to grab and hold stability, that we were going to go into a time of basically vertical growth and change. And I remember thinking when I did this study, wow, a career is not like a train anymore. We were looking at 20-year patterns of careers for graduates of Harvard Business School. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's not a train track anymore. It's more like a car. You can drive it around. Maybe it even goes off-road. And then I realized that there is no road, that we are in conditions that are more like a choppy ocean with large swells. I just watched a whole bunch of huge wave surfer videos. Not because I surf, but because it reminds me of what we're going through in our lives. Everybody, right? You're like, there's this dude on a board in this wave they're always going for the 100-foot wave, which is like, if you fell from 100 feet, it would kill you. And they're up on these waves and they're surfing them. And I just stare at them and think, that's actually how we can do square four now. It's the only way.
Those cup holders are starting to look better and better to me.
Exactly. Grab the cup holders. They may be your only defense.
Oh, my gosh. All right. So scary, change, square four doesn't look like it used to look, if it ever did. So for God's sake, how do we come to our senses?
You know when I'm going to tell you.
When?
In a minute.
All right. Let's figure this out.
Let's do it, Rowie. Let's do it.
So we were talking recently, Marty, about a mutual friend of ours who we love very dearly, but who has a tendency to make very big proclamations about their life. Like they're just Here, I've discovered the truth. Here is the truth, and henceforth,
henceforth, actually not an untrue slip of the tongue. That henceforth,
henceforth, I will live according to this solemn vow.
And now I will be vegan. And then you talk to him 3 weeks later. And now I eat nothing but meat. Yeah. It's adorable. It's adorable. It's somebody really trying to do square 4 right, but kind of going with an old pattern.
Yeah, because it's not what nature says, is it?
No, only the culture says, grab something, make a proclamation, and hang on to it forever. And, they're like, they even have professions. I recently met a retired monk, and wow, how cool to have a thing where he could just say, I'm going to be a monk, and that's it forever. And the culture has categories like that for us, but nature does not.
Because you know what? You might meet a retired monk, but you'll never meet a retired monkey.
Oh.
Yeah?
Wait, everybody?
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
I don't know what
culture, bitches.
I don't know what everyone else
Monkey
thinks.
is goddamn nature.
My figurative hat is off to you, Rowan Mangan.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy it because you're never going to get a mic drop as cool as that one ever again.
Booyah! Booyah! Yeah, in nature, everything's always changing. Yeah. Everything.
Yeah, so you don't have that, like, instead of, here's your marriage, okay, you've got marriage tick, career tick, and then it's like, you've made it, kid. Now, square 4 for us, so many of us, for most of us, is more like, okay, like you're on your surfboard and it's like, all right, so this week, all right, we just found out that tomorrow is a Monday and our daughter's school's closed. So it's like, all right, surfboard, rearrange your position.
Everything.
All right, this week is going to be, all right, so the next hour is going to be, and that's how we do square 4. We can have square 4 for an hour.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and what nature offers us is an image of something that is continuously changing, and from that position, a sort of reevaluation of what it means to hold on, what it means to last. And it's an image that incorporates an infinite number of unimagined variations. You watch a tree. I'm looking at the trees outside our windows, and they go through the same cycle, new growth, midsummer, autumn, and sleep, which is what trees do in the winter. But every time they do it, it looks different. Every time they do it, the temperature is different. The tulip poplar drops some of its leaves because we've had an unusually wet summer because of climate change. There are new birds in the trees. There are invasive bug species that they have to defend against. So they're never the same. They're always changing, and it's at total peace. And there is a regularity to it, but it's because it flows with the variations that come up.
Yeah. Yeah, the variability of within the regularity, something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that reevaluation, I think we can make that click in our minds. The way we value a moment, the way we value a day, the way we value the rest of our lives.
Yeah, but I think we're always having to strip back what the culture has tried to make us believe about what the trajectory should look like of life, right?
Yes.
I was relatively recently, we were at a concert.
Guess whose?
Might have been an Ani DeFranco concert. I'm not prepared to be drawn on this.
I don't really remember because she's not interesting enough to remember. She's fabulous. Okay, go on.
All right. So we're at this concert, hadn't started yet, and I went to the bathroom. And there was a conversation going on while ladies peed.
Actually, while people peed, it was
an all-gender bathroom, but there were
all gender.
But it was interesting because the genders were actually still, for the most part,
peeing in different ways,
peeing in different rooms.
Oh, interesting!
It was interesting, okay. Yeah. But I think the point is they could feel comfortable going where they were comfortable.
Yeah, it was great.
In my area, there were some people sitting down to pee, and a conversation was happening that was like, we thought we got here so early thinking we'd be sure to get a seat, only to find that we've got to this gig and it's only standing room. And man, we're so lame, we're so old. And I was waiting to wash my hands after this person, and I said to her, we just had the exact same conversation that we got early, so we were going to get a seat. And then we're so lame, we're so old. We don't want to stand up all night. But, of course, in the end, we freaking loved it. So but what this woman said to me that was so cool, and it was like, God, you have some really interesting, like, short encounters with people sometimes. And she said, but what's cool about the fact that we're old and we're at this gig here tonight is that we've lived long enough and we've loved Ani's music long enough that we've both had the experience of seeing her in big venues, right? Really big venues where it's like it's great, but it's a completely different experience. And now we get to see her in this intimate one. And it was a transporting gig.
Yeah.
So what the culture says about Ani DeFranco's career trajectory is that you start out, in basement bar music venues, and then you expand and you expand and you expand until your Taylor Swift Eras tour.
Yeah.
And it's all arenas and stuff.
Yeah.
And so, growth at all costs. And what I loved about and I know for sure that Ani DeFranco would think that was bullshit. And her career did get to that sort of playing in arenas point. But what happened in this room at this gig that we went to was you had people who loved her music so much squished up against each other, all standing up, even though they were old, jumping up and down.
Yeah.
Everyone in the goddamn room knowing every word to the song, and it was heaven. And that's where culture says, just grow and grow and get bigger and bigger. Nature is saying distill, enhance, like savor, ripen, age,
Yeah, age means something beautiful when it's a wine, right? Like what if you can age into something more delicate, more multifaceted,
more complex. And and it also just made me think of the Cheryl Strayed title, which I think they made into a TV show, Tiny Beautiful Things, and how a lot of beautiful things are tiny. And the more we can recognize the beauty in a lot of tiny things, the more, I don't know, I feel like the more we're holding steady on our surfboard.
Yeah. Well, I loved seeing her too, because it was her birthday. We actually saw her perform on her birthday. And I don't know how old she is, but I think like mid-50s. But I couldn't tell if she was wearing any makeup at all. I don't think so. Her hair wasn't particularly.
She doesn't usually wear makeup.
And she was one of those. She's one of those people who is ripening into age instead of just aging. It was like she was completely comfortable being a tiny, beautiful thing. She is tiny and beautiful, but she's beautiful in a way that it seems indifferent to age. Like she really doesn't.
Might I provide you with a lyric on this topic?
What? Lyrics off the cuff? Not even tattooed on your wrist?
No, not yet. Not yet. So she has a line, it took me too long to realize that I don't take good pictures because I have the kind of beauty that moves. Now, if that's not culture and nature.
And that's our whole point about Square 4, is it's flow, move, shift, let go. And the holding on, the gripping is actually a way to destroy your life. Like if you are in Liz Gilbert's... Sorry, that was a shift of something. It wasn't you're in Liz Gilbert's house or anything. It's if you're in a relationship and you're hanging on after it wants to let go, you want a Square 4 that is no longer viable, you can hang on to something that becomes grotesque and horrifying.
Right. Oh,
and
yeah.
In Eat, Pray, Love, Liz talks about her divorce and her friend saying, the day is ending. It's time for something that was beautiful to turn into something else that is beautiful. Now let go. And what happens then, we've been taught to believe that if you let go, what happens is the abyss, the chaos, fragmentation, destruction. Instead, what comes up is exactly what comes up after the forest has lain fallow for a season in winter. And what happens is a new season of generative explosion of creativity. Like if you're in a state of continuous creativity and that's your surfboard, if you're just, if you're saying, okay, this is where I am, but where I am is the appreciation of the tiny, beautiful things and the appreciation of the flow of things. And you're willing to let something that is beautiful give way to something else that is beautiful. Then square 4 becomes joyful instead of frightening or stale and tight. Right.
And you have when you're teaching the Wayfinder program, you have little mantras for each of the squares, and for square 4, it's everything is changing, and that's okay.
Well,
everything is still changing. Is that what it is?
Yeah. So square 1 is I don't know what the hell's going on, and that's okay. If something's just happened to you, then square 2 is there are no rules. The old rules are all gone. I can be whoever I want to, and that's okay. Square 3 is this is a lot harder than I thought it would be, and that's okay. And square 4. When I wrote this down in a book, it was change is coming, and that's okay.
Right.
But I change it now to change is continuous. Change is always happening, and that's okay.
And that's okay. So I guess what we're kind of proposing here, Marty, is that we all kind of try and do our square 4s differently, so that we're, instead of a kind of complacent or tightly held square 4, we're doing a creative square 4. We're doing a receptive square 4 where we're on the lookout for the next change and we're ready to greet it instead of trying to fend it off somehow, right?
I loved this TV series called The 100-Foot Wave, which I watched when we were on our way to Australia and on the way back. No. Bear with me now, because they go out looking for the biggest waves there are, and they see them coming, and they're moving so fast that it takes a jet ski to put the surfer in place, right? So he's surfboarding, like he's water skiing behind a jet ski, and the jet ski tries to put him at the very top, or her, some of them were women, at the very top of this massive wave. And there's this moment where they decide, do I let go or do I hang on? And one guy took his wife out, and she was a brilliant surfer herself, but it was such a huge wave that she hung on, and she got thoroughly smashed. Like the wave took her, it mashed her. And she said, I'm never going to do that again because I like breathing. Thank you very much. It's a fun habit. I want to keep it up.
I respect and admire that person.
I do too, because that's the way, that's where nature is taking her. But you'd see people at this moment where if they let go, they were facing this unbelievable, monstrous wave. But if they hung on, it for sure would kill them. So at the moment they let go of the rope, I always get this little electric spark inside me, because I felt that before, not in surfing, but in life. I'm on the lip of a huge change. Okay, you came into my life. We all fell in love, the three of us. And it was either shut this down, it's weird, it's strange, I can't do this, or drop the rope and take the wave.
Knowing that in your metaphor, holding on could crush all your bones too. Mm-hmm. It's not like, stick to safety, because there's no such thing as safety.
It isn't. After we'd all had that bizarre falling in love with three people that we were so baffled by, and nature did it because we didn't control that at all. But if we'd tried to go back to normal, I think it would have destroyed my soul. I really do. It was that intense. So, and I do think that we get guidance in this very difficult time. And so we know something's telling us this is the wave, drop the rope. And it's super scary, but the ride is also really fun. And in light of all this, as we've discussed it, Ro came up with the most brilliant life motto. I really want to I subscribe to it myself, and I think I will get this tattooed on my body. So, Ro, please tell our listeners about our new forever vow.
Well, I wanted to be like our friend who makes proclamations, and it's sort of in the same part of me that wants to get an awesome song lyric tattooed on my body. So, I was talking to Marty, and I finally really felt it inside myself, and so as of probably a week ago, I have now made a solemn vow, to for the rest of my life, see how it goes.
Boom.
Yeah, every day.
Mic drop.
Every minute. I will never deviate from this way of living. I will just see how it goes.
I will see how it goes. Abso-freaking-lutely. That's how you do square 4 in this day and age. So whatever you're facing, if you're facing a shock, or if you're just like gliding along thinking everything's fixed and fabulous, and you start to go, oh, but everything changes, I'm getting scared. Take a deep breath. Realize that you were born, nature wants you to surf this. You were born with the capacity to do this. Culture says it has to be rigid, but your nature can flow, wants to flow with whatever happens to you. So let go of the rope, like drop the rope and see what new, beautiful thing that you've never imagined comes to fill the place you thought where you would never change again.
And as you let go, don't forget,
stay wild.
We hope you're enjoying Bewildered. If you're in the USA and want to be notified when a new episode comes out, text the word WILD to 570-873-0144. We're also on Instagram. Our handle is Bewildered Podcast. You can follow us to get updates, hear funny snippets and outtakes, and chat with other fans of the show. Bewildered is produced by Scott Forster with support from the brilliant team at MBI. And remember, if you're having fun, please rate and review. And stay wild.